So I finally sat down and watched 13 Reasons Why. A person on Twitter asked what my thoughts were on it and thought that I probably would have some good commentary on this series. And I do think I have some pretty good commentary in store for you, dear viewer. So I guess I'm not going to spend much time prefacing what's going on, what's happening. I will assume that you guys know that it is a Netflix series about a 16 to 17-year-old girl who killed herself. And she recorded 13 tapes of herself explaining why she committed harakiri. Maybe I shouldn't be so flippant about the fact that we're talking about suicide, but, I mean, I don't know, finer things in life, you gotta laugh sometimes. So I think first I'll start off with the technical review, and then I will end the video up by chatting about the interpretations or different story elements I found in the actual series, and the different themes that I think you could probably take out of it, as well as address some consistent criticisms as well. So, starting off, I don't really think I had the reaction to this series the person who requested this video thought I would have. He probably thought that I would hate this series quite a bit, or I would find it offensive in certain respects. I mean, not like really personally offensive, but just kind of like, you know, silly in some regards. But overall, my thoughts of the show is that it's kind of, yeah, it's alright. I mean, there are some things that I honestly found myself really enjoying. I really love a good story about revenge, or a good story about a descent into madness. So watching Clay go from this passive, weak male who just kind of let shit happen to an individual that was actually trying to get things done was a joy. I actually enjoyed watching that element of Clay's character. However, I mean, I guess, you know, talk more technical about it. There are a couple of things that stuck out to me. Like, for example, Clay's scar in the series, the makeup department was not consistent, so you could clearly see in different episodes the Clay's scar would change and morph up. But I mean, you know, that's a little minor nitpick. It's just some things you notice on the technical side. I mean, there are some areas where the acting was a bit weak, not as believable. One thing that I found really, I guess I'm going to say irritating, or one thing that kind of took me out of what was going on in this series, was Hannah's voiceover of her tapes. Hannah was way too snarky for me. Like, she had way too much spite in her voice to really convince me that this individual who was recording these tapes was thinking about killing themselves. It really sounded like, to me, listening to her voiceover, that it was Hannah's goal or her intent to eventually just, you know, surprise everyone in the end, saying, no, I didn't kill myself, I just did this out of revenge. And that honestly would not have bothered me, viewer, if that happened. If the story ended with Hannah never being dead, and she just did that to torture people mentally and emotionally, I would not be upset. I'd be like, wow, that's an interesting plot twist. Let's see where this goes. I understand why they couldn't do it like that, obviously, because the show is trying to portray some realm of realism. You know, who records 13... you know, tapes of themselves, right? I mean, we've got MP3 players. What are you doing, Hannah, right? No, but on a serious notion, yeah, I understand that the show was still trying to have some sort of realness and some sort of weight to it, so I could see why it wouldn't end that way. However, Hannah's voiceover, her acting, her voice acting, again, was way too snarky for me to really buy into the fact that this is a suicidal person recounting her life events to me. She sounded more like a spiteful bitch. And again, I mean, for the theme, or I mean, for the tone that they're trying to set, I don't really think it matched it, but I mean, it is what it is, really. So all in all, from a technical standpoint, it was alright series. I mean, it's from Netflix. I don't really expect great things from Netflix, but I don't really expect bad things from Netflix either. I just kind of expect, you know, decent acting, you know, okay locations and sets, and you just, you know, you take it for what it is. And taking it for what it is, technically, it was alright. So that being said, that kind of ends my technical review. I mean, it was an okay series, you know, just visually, editing-wise, and everything. I will say one last nitpick, though. There are certain parts of the editing I didn't like the flashbacks were a little inconsistent. I'm not really sure how I would correct it. I think I'd have to take each episode individually and explain how I would probably edit it out to make the flashback seem more natural. But the flashbacks seem to kind of happen at random. It kind of took away from some moments that I think probably should have been lingered on and focused on a little more. So, I mean, again, I'd need some examples and some actual episodes to explain it, but yeah, again, that's just a little nitpick. I mean, so let's actually start talking about the themes of the show and the criticisms of the show people had. Because what I've noticed is some people either really, really like 13 Reasons Why, or they really fucking hated 13 Reasons Why. And I watched a couple of different reviews from people who hated 13 Reasons Why and read the comments of the people. And I think I'm probably going to spend some time addressing and chatting about that and really trying to explain why I think they interpreted some areas wrong. So two biggest issues I've seen people talk about when it comes to 13 Reasons Why. Which one should I start with? The two criticisms really go hand in hand. So I guess I'll start off by saying a lot of people were really annoyed with Hannah as a character. Like, a lot of people really were not fond of Hannah. There's a lot of men, or even MGTOWs, didn't like the fact that Hannah did not accept responsibility for her life, that Hannah did not accept that it was up to her to do anything different. And honestly, I have to say, I mean, in terms of accuracy, I think the show hit that mark spot on. I mean, like, back in high school, I tried to date 16-year-old girls, right? I mean, you know, I know how 16-year-old girls are. I spent a great degree of time with them. They are fucking shitty people. I mean, they're terrible people. I mean, you know, that age range of just 16. I don't know what happens turning from 15 to 16 for some girls, but they just metamorphosize into these abominations. I mean, these I'm just messing around. On a serious notion, though, I mean, there are a lot of 16-year-old girls who are just emotional wrecks and that are really, really terrible or just really hard to deal with. So I can completely understand why anyone would be upset with Hannah as a 16-year-old girl, because some of them are shitty fucking people. There's just no real way around it. That said, however, I mean, I think that was actually a pretty spot-on portrayal. I actually think this is actually to the show's credit, because it's really accurate in showing the emotional turmoil and the lack of responsibility that a 16-year-old girl would probably have when it comes to trying to fix her life and deal with her life. I really think that's the show's credit. I mean, I found myself annoyed at Hannah on numerous occasions as well, just like I found myself annoyed dealing with actual 16-year-old girls that I tried to date, or I did actually date. I mean, I actually did date a girl who was like Hannah. I mean, like my ex-girlfriend tried to kill herself twice. I mean, like, she wasn't successful, but I mean, she was in the same mindset. She shared the same feelings as Hannah Baker. I mean, I dated someone like that. So I mean, from my personal experience dating and talking to women like this, I mean, I think they hit Hannah right on the head. And people who are frustrated with her, I understand the criticism, I understand the frustration, but I also am impressed by the accuracy. I mean, this Hannah Baker is a 16-year-old girl through and through. I mean, the accuracy is phenomenal to me. I'm not even gonna lie. And so that actually kind of directly leads me into the other criticism I heard quite a bit from people on the show. And that is, a lot of people didn't like the themes or the message of the show. And that is that it's everyone's fault if someone commits suicide. That all of the characters are responsible for Hannah Baker's death. And even some characters will go as far as to straight up say that, yeah, we all killed Hannah, rather than the message that it was all up to Hannah to make her life better and to do something different. Now here's the thing. I disagree with that, but I completely understand why anyone would walk away from the show with the idea, or thinking the idea, that it is everyone's fault and it's everyone's responsibility that Hannah died. Because the show made that point, I mean, they made a really big issue. I mean, they put that message in there pretty heavy-handed with, I mean, like, direct quotes from the characters, no less, but also just certain situations that occurred. It made it seem pretty clear and obvious that the show was trying to say that if someone had done something different at any point in these tapes, then Hannah's life could have gone differently, or the story could have been different if someone would have just reacted differently. And honestly, to the show's credit, they have a point there. I do think that there are certain times and certain periods in the show, or like in the story that Hannah tells, that could have made things different. That if someone had acted differently, if someone had done something different, it could have changed the outcome. I mean, for example, there was the basketball player Zach, who would take all of the different notes from Hannah, right? So Hannah sets the trap for him, and Zach takes a note and reads the letter for him, and he just walks away. He doesn't do anything about it. I think at that point in time, Zach could have made a difference in Hannah's life. No, it's not his responsibility to. I'm not saying that it is. However, what I am saying, which is clear and obvious, that if he would have taken the note to, I don't know, Mr. Porter, maybe some people might have a problem with that, but if he would have taken the note to an authority figure, if Zach himself would have talked to Hannah and tried to encourage her to get some help, if Zach himself had been proactive and had done something, who knows? Maybe Hannah wouldn't have done what she did. I mean, we don't know, and I think that's a pretty interesting part of the story. Again, it's not Zach's responsibility, nor is it Zach's fault. However, the show does make a pretty heavy-handed attempt to show us that if someone at any point in time would have done something differently, it probably could have changed the outcome. So I find it, I cannot blame anyone for thinking that, yeah, the show is trying to tell us that it's everyone else's responsibility if someone commits suicide. But I think a lot of people are misinterpreting it. I think a lot of people are taking the feelings of the characters as the message of a preacher. What I mean by that is, I think a lot of people are misinterpreting the way a character in the story feels and what they're saying for a blatant message that's trying to come across the audience. And again, I understand why you feel that way, but I disagree. And I'll explain why. We have to understand Hannah as a character in the story, okay? And the first thing we have to understand is that Hannah is a white woman, okay? And white women are probably the most passive creatures on Earth. I mean, seriously, like you could probably grab a white woman off of the street, and the only question she'd ask you is, well, where are we going? Like, white women are remarkably passive creatures. I mean, of course, not all white women, but a lot of white women, very passive. They just kind of let shit happen to them. So Hannah is no exception to this general rule of white women, okay? She really isn't, and this is consistent throughout the show. I mean, there are certain points in the story that just show the hallmarks of Hannah's passivity. I mean, at one point early, at the very beginning of the series, Hannah literally gets slapped in the face, and she eats that shit. Like, she eats it, and she just sits down and starts crying. I mean, come on. Another point, I think in like the very next episode, or the episode after she got slapped in the face, the guy Bryce grabs her ass, and what does she do? Fuck all. She walks out the store crying. Even with Zach, the one time she was somewhat proactive, you know, trying to set the trap for Zach and to get him to react to her. You know, what was the worst that she did? The most that she did was she just said, Zach, why me? Why me, Zach? She didn't chase him. She didn't message him. She didn't go talk to him afterwards or any direct confrontation besides. That's all she did. And she just let the nigga go. It's a consistent theme in Hannah's character is that she is a passive person that will do nothing to try to make her life better. She just lets shit happen. So Hannah is very reactive than proactive. I mean, we can keep going on this. I mean, at one point, even at the, I don't know. I don't think I need to keep going. I think I've made my point clear. So understanding that a character like Hannah, who is incredibly passive and just lets everything happen to her, I think it makes perfect sense that she, in her own mind, would tell the story in a way that makes it seem that it's everyone else's fault and everyone else's responsibility to make her life better, but never her own. It's not her, in her mind, because she's a passive white woman that just lets shit happen, she thinks that the whole of the world should change and make things, and people should do things differently to make her feel better, rather than taking any proactive step and trying to make her own life better. And I think that's just a consistent part of the character that was shown. I think that is why she ended up committing suicide. I don't think that the show was really trying to tell us that it is indeed 100% definitively everyone else's fault. Like, if the writers ever come out and say, or like, that's exactly what they were implying, then I'll accept being wrong. But I really think that the writers were just going for accuracy. From the point of view of a passive woman that's not going to be proactive in doing anything, yeah, it makes sense that she would think it's everyone else's fault. I mean, there's only a few times in the story where Hannah is proactive, and most of the time they're all to her detriment. Like, for example, when she told Clay to leave and get out. I mean, Clay's only cardinal sin throughout the entire series was that he just couldn't read the woman's mind. Or, I would be inclined to say that if I didn't realize that Clay, too, also suffers from this bout of passivity. Clay, too, is not exempt from this character flaw, that Clay at no point in time ever actually tries to date Hannah. I mean, he makes passes at her, he dances with her, but he never really actually tries to dig deep and really get into a personal relationship with her. And the moment he tried, it was far too late. And when Hannah told him to leave, Clay accepted it and left. Again, very passive act. Now, I don't blame Clay for that. That is entirely Hannah's fault. And in all honesty, as a man, you're never really going to know that women have this idea in their heads that you can read their minds and read social situations and understand what they mean. I mean, this is pretty accurate to most young men's experiences. There are lots of women who think that if they say I'm fine, or if they, make passive aggressive jabs at men, that they'll figure out that there's something wrong, and that you should legitimately just know when there's something wrong with them. Again, this is actually accuracy to the actual like living experience that I've had personally. So I can't fault the show for this. I've dealt with women like this. A lot of women think this. So again, I guess points for accuracy, and I mean points for double accuracy, because a lot of men would interpret Hannah telling him to get the fuck out as get the fuck out. But again, Clay is passive in this area. Clay just kind of leaves and walks out. So Clay also suffers from this passive bout, and that's why it hits Clay the hardest, because he realizes that if he had been active, if he had done something, it could have been different. And honestly, I mean, who knows? Maybe it could have been different. I mean, it would have been nice to see a show with an alternative future or alternative reality where we get to see, maybe that's what season 2 will be. Yeah, I doubt it, but yeah, I don't know. I think to really beat this point home and try to explain the differences between the message of the story versus the feelings the characters have, I think is to address another criticism about Hannah's character as a person, and that is the fact that she leaves Clay as a really sad, depressed individual after listening to his tape. That she leaves Clay with the guilt that if he had just been Charles Xavier and read her mind, nothing bad would have ever happened to her, or that he could have saved her life. But I think a lot of people are missing something really important about the story, and because we as the audience have all of the information. I mean, we're pretty much omnipotent here. And because we have all the information, we fail to understand and see from Hannah's point of view probably one of the most important details. And that is the fact that Hannah doesn't know that Clay was in love with her. Like, Hannah thinks in her mind, at least as far as I understand it, that Clay was a nice guy that she rejected and that she messed up. She doesn't realize that the weight of Clay's feelings. So when she records the tape, she's not saying this to hurt Clay. I think, honestly, in her mind, she was trying to clear the air before she died. It was the final, look, I'm sorry I did this shitty thing to you, but, please don't be mad at me. I think that's what Hannah was trying to say in her tape. Because a lot of people interpret that as a really shitty thing to do, to leave someone with the idea or the mindset that if he had done something differently, he could have saved her life, or to leave him with that guilt that he could have done something. And I think that kind of spills over again to Clay as a character. Again, I don't think that the show is trying to tell us that it's everyone else's fault. I think Clay just feels personally responsible because he was not a proactive person. I mean, if you remember, Clay was pretty passive too. Clay hardly ever really makes moves at Hannah, and makes moves to try to date Hannah, and it takes other people to try to push him and goad him into doing something, despite the fact that he really loves this woman and really cares about her. I mean, it's really sad, honestly. I think when it all comes down to it, I think the real true message of 13 Reasons Why is not really so much that it's everyone's fault, but I think it's a cautionary tale about what happens when you're a really passive person. When you're an individual that expects everyone else around you to do something for you, if you're an individual that isn't proactive in trying to obtain the things that you want, you put it simply, you lose it. Hannah is a pretty heavy-handed example of losing something. When you're not proactive for Clay, because he wanted to date her, he loved her, but he never really put in a great deal of effort until the party, and when it was all too late. However, because Clay was passive and let a lot of shit happen to Hannah, just kind of let her drift apart, he lost something. That his passivity led him to losing something. Hannah's passivity led her to losing her life. I think a message that you can really get from 13 Reasons Why is being a passive person that's not proactive in getting the things you want can lead to your detriment. It is not so much that it's everyone's fault. It's actually, at the end of the day, your fault personally. It is Hannah's fault personally. She chose to kill herself. There's no real way around it. Because she was passive. She never at any point in time tried to make her life better. And I think that is the message that you can really get from the show. That you have to try to make your life better. When you're passive and you let all of these bad things happen to you, they really start to pile up and they really bunk down on you. And you have to be the one to make a change and do something. Because if not, no one is ever going to know that there's anything wrong with you. I think that's another thing that's really important about 13 Reasons Why too. That if you, as the main character, no one knew what was going on with Hannah. Because again, she was passive. She hardly ever reached out for help. And even the one time Hannah did reach out for help, actually, even the methods Hannah used to reach out for help was passive. When she wrote the note and put it in communications class, she didn't go to anyone. Again, passive act. Even with Mr. Porter, she tried to get Mr. Porter to chase her rather than her straight up saying, hey, I was raped, I need help. Hannah is not an active person, and I think that core detail, that core fatal trait in Hannah is what the show is trying to get across to us. Being a passive person is going to lead to your detriment because no one can ever help you if you never say or do anything about it. And you'll never help yourself if you never say or do anything about it. So, hopefully, you know, that's you guys can get something out of what I've said after this long diatribe. Hopefully, you know, I mean, I've made the person who wanted to, you know, see my thoughts proud. I didn't hate the show. I don't think the show is bad, but I can completely understand why anyone would interpret the way they did interpret the show. I just don't think it's accurate. I think when you understand character motivations and understand the accuracy of the characters, I actually think that you can obtain an appreciation for the show that's not found. It just takes a little critical thought, but that's what I'm here for. So, with that being said, man, now I certainly hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And if you did, man, go ahead and click the like button. Now, shoot, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below. And as always, you guys have yourselves a great day. And I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.